in this capacity, in this role. So my name is Kate Langan. I'm a professor at Western Michigan University in Kalamazoo, Michigan. So here's our mitten. That's where we are on the thumb, down here on the palm. I'm currently the engagement librarian, and I've been in this position for about 2.5 years, going on 3 years. And prior to that, I served as the humanities librarian for approximately 15 years when I started at Western. I've also worked at an international high school in the library in Berlin, Germany. I've worked at a small Catholic school in the elementary library. I did online reference. This is all after completing graduate school for my MLIS. So I've done a pretty wide range of different types of librarianship, except for public librarianship. So that's a little different. So I was really curious before we get started. I know this is an instruction retreat. I have two quick questions. How many of you do engagement or outreach or whatever you call it in your libraries? And by engagement, I'm thinking anything that is not related to information literacy specifically or directly. So any sort of programming or outreach or tabling. I'm just really curious. You can put it in the chat. And I'm just curious. And then if there is anyone who is not instruction or engagement, I would love to know what your roles are in your libraries as well. So, and I'll just look at the chat. You can put it in as needed. And this will just help me frame who the audience is. And so my background, like I said, is very much ensconced in information literacy, but what I do now goes beyond information literacy specifically. I'll also mention that I am the chair of the ACRL Project Outcome Editorial Board this last year and this year. So I've been serving in that committee in ACRL for the past 4 years. I have one more year and then I'll hand it off to somebody else. So today we'll be talking quite about assessment. So, and just talking about what it is we do, how we measure it, how we define it, how we measure it. And this goes back to the question is, how do we get people, what you just posed a second ago, how do we get our campus involved? That data that we capture in the language that we use can help us generate engagement. So I'll be covering all of that in the presentation today. So I'm just looking really quickly at chat, and then I'm going to share my screen in just a second, maybe give some more people a chance to jump in. So let's see. And then during the presentation, please feel free to interrupt me, raise your hand, or just unmute. I welcome that dialogue and that conversation rather than just being a talking head. Or if you don't want to do that, feel free to put it in chat, and you can send me a message privately and maybe I can address it, or publicly and I can address it as well. So again, just an open conversation today.
Would you like us to be monitoring the chat and letting you know when there's new questions?
Yeah, maybe if I get too like laser focused, like sometimes I feel like I'm a shark going in for the kill when I do presentations, like I become so blind to everything. So that would be wonderful. So I'm just looking. Yeah, okay. Excellent. And then did anyone go to LOEX this year? Just if you can just do a raise of hands if you want. I'm just curious. I love LOEX. It was in just outside of Chicago this year. Such a great conference. COVID. Yeah. So Carrie said, just looking at it, like COVID kind of killed and now you're all starting to come back to it. Yes. Right. It's that rebuilding phase. It's been really tricky. I feel like I'm hitting a stride, but okay, so so I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. It's 9:13, so I'll go ahead and get started. I just wanted to make sure. And so I need to share my screen first and then do the presentation. So you probably see a spreadsheet right now which we'll get to in a little bit.
I don't actually see that yet.
Oh, do you see my presentation?
No.
Oh, what do you see?
All of the folks in attendance, all of our little heads.
Oh, cool. This just worked. This worked
I know.
an hour
Let's
ago.
see. There we go. Will you try again? I just made you.
Does
I
that
just
work?
changed. Yes, I can see your spreadsheet
Oh,
now.
yay. Excellent.
Thank
Okay,
goodness.
excellent.
Right.
Okay, so so you see the slide. So I see all of you, and I should be able to see, well, I can only see a few of you. So if you raise your hand, I won't be able to see that, but I do see the chat. So that's
Okay.
good.
And we'll watch the chat for you as well.
Thank you. Okay, let me just get organized. Sorry. Oh yeah, see with all these screens. Can I hide? I'm trying to hide. There we go. That way I can. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about flourishing. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, guys. Here we go. I swear, all the practicing and it doesn't matter. Why
That's
is
one
it
of the
going?
benefits of presenting here. I think we're pretty low key.
Why is
Yeah,
it?
librarians are pretty
We allow
nice. Well, you know, you're a librarian, so.
Like I said, I'm committed to something going wrong today. So there we go. It's done. I'm over it. Okay. So today we're going to be talking about the concept of flourishing in academic libraries. And we're going to be talking specifically about confidence, connectedness, and belonging in academic libraries. And so I'm going to be talking about the concept of flourishing and how we can use that as a measure for optimistic impact in the programming that we do in academic libraries. I'm also going to be presenting a framework that I created called the Framework for Flourishing with Information. It's a toolkit that defines and measures flourishing with information. And I'll present 3 frames. So this framework for flourishing with information complements the ACRL framework for information literacy, but it is a standalone framework in that it provides language on the frames of belonging, confidence, and connectedness. So, and we're going to explore that today. So I'm going to talk about how flourishing adds to our professional portfolios of what we do in academic libraries, and how having a shared professional language and assessment tools or strategies will help elevate the importance of our work and then help us engage with our communities on campus and for ourselves in our own workplace. And also, getting data for administration and, annual reports. So we'll be able to work on the positive impacts of the student experience in the libraries, their time on campus, and then also help prepare the students for when they leave campus. So today and tomorrow's sessions are sort of interactive. I'm not doing any breakout rooms, but I will be sharing a few interactive platforms like Padlet. I have another survey, and we'll be working with a Google Doc. So you are welcome to share as much or as little as you are comfortable, but it's a chance for us to have that conversation while I'm talking. I don't want to just, because I'm hoping that today this will generate some great ideas and that you'll be able to share with each other. So tomorrow we're going to build on this presentation and on some of the brainstorming activities that we're doing today, and we're going to take that information and do a deeper dive into how we as librarians think about and how we assess flourishing in the work that we do. And by the end of tomorrow, the goal is that you'll have walked through the process that I walked through, so you can develop your own tools or toolkit, and hopefully walk away with an assessment plan or program that you can take and implement maybe hopefully this year. And then I'll be sharing some of my aha moments, and I hope that you'll share some of yours as well. So after today, you'll be able to define flourishing. You'll be able to summarize the value of flourishing, identify ways to evaluate flourishing, and also ways to apply this framework for flourishing that I present, or maybe build on it for your own. And I'll say that this framework is very much a thought, it's a way, it's something that I've been working on for several years, and I've vetted some ideas with some colleagues, but I'm always welcome to other ideas, and maybe building this into a bigger tool for everybody. So with that, I have the first interactive toolkit, and I hope the Padlet works. But here is the URL in the link. So my first question is, how do you define flourishing? So I'm going to stop my presentation and go to this is on a Padlet. And if you don't know how to use a Padlet, you can there's a little plus sign in the bottom right-hand corner that you can use. There we go. Yep. So here we have, here I have this initial question: how do you define flourishing? So you can either post in this thread, or you can come down here and start your own thread if you would like. It's all up to you. And then we're going to revisit this in a few minutes. So I'm going to give you a second, and of course I'm going to give you some ideas in a second, and then we'll compare and see if we've come to an agreement. That's our first step. Oh, I love happy success. That's so cute. Steady, positive growth. Being content or satisfied, growing and learning, growth, emotionally healthy, learning, growing, maturing, growing, successful. Okay, yeah, you guys are already hitting some of the key aspects of flourishing. So that's great. Oh, I'm so excited. I'll give you a few more seconds. Okay, so let me go back to my presentation. Feel free to keep adding. We'll revisit that in just a second. So the concept of flourishing actually, well, I don't think it starts with Aristotle, but Aristotle is one of the ones who kicks off the concept of flourishing, and he termed it eudaimonia. And this eudaimonia is the human flourishing is to live a life of virtuous and ethical activity, to live well, and to, most importantly, to live well with others. And I immediately find so many connections to information literacy in this concept of Aristotle's definition of flourishing. So flourishing is at its core the expression of human potential and purpose. So human potential and purpose. I find that definition to be so powerful. And that is what has been driving me. So I want to break down this concept of flourishing. So human potential and purpose is something that is civically minded, sustained over time through virtuous and ethical actions and choices. And virtuous meaning that it is for the benefit of the self, but also for others. So that is that virtuous action and the ethical choices that we make in our lives. So flourishing is not just about happiness or thriving, but it's about the ability to develop personal value systems and practices and for decision making, to navigate life, to navigate life's choices, so not only for the good of the self, but for the collective good of society. And also, I saw a lot of you were mentioning growing, that this growth part is that it is a sustained, it's sustained over one's lifetime. There is no end. It's not like okay, we're now flourishing, we've hit our potential and purpose. No, it extends the entire life, so that we are constantly evolving and adapting with our society and our environment. So we could quickly go back to what we did on the Padlet, but I think we've hit quite a bit. We hit thriving, we hit happiness, we hit growth, which I see as that long sustained development over time. We hit choices, we hit life, personal values. So I think we did a pretty great job there. So good job to everyone. Great way to start a Wednesday. So with flourishing, there are so many models, right? This concept has evolved quite a bit over the millennia, correct? And so there are so many ways that people have tried to talk about flourishing, try to develop models for flourishing. And so it's been captured, tracked, mapped, modeled in so many different ways. And so here I have a link to my LibGuide on flourishing, and I'll take the link and I'll put it in the chat. And I've, rather than going through and spending too much time on every single model, you can peruse at your leisure while I talk. So one of the most well-known models, right, is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? At the very top, he talks about the way that we can fulfill our potential and our purpose is if we have all of our other needs in that hierarchy of needs met. So I wanted to just give you that link, and let me exit out just to show you where we are. So that link should have brought you to this guide. So thumbs up if that worked. And then, so the models of flourishing is here. I will be will be referring back and forth to this guide quite a bit today and tomorrow. So and then I have this up so you have it for reference at a later date as well. So all the links, everything that we're working on will all be captured in this guide. So here we have flourishing, and then really quickly, I'm curious to hear, so at the very bottom, don't want to make everyone seasick, Western, WMU has created their own wellness wheel. I'm really curious to know if any of your universities have created a wellness wheel and what that looks like, and if you I would love to have you share a link to it in the chat or maybe on the Discord page, because I would love to see how different schools talk about their student well-being. And what I love about ours is that at the very core of it is identity, and we'll be touching on that briefly. Let me go back to the slideshow. So the models for flourishing share the concepts of relationships, right? So how the different parts of our lives are related to each other and serve as a foundation for us to achieve flourishing. And in these relationships, if we think about it in the world of academic librarianship, the relationship we're most interested in is our relationship with information. So what is that relationship between students and information? And this is kind of my origin story of how I got interested in flourishing. So flourishing, so our relationship with information should lead us to nurturing our human purpose and potential, and nurturing that purpose and potential with information is fundamental to what we do in academic librarianship. And a little bit of theory here, not too much. I found that the connection of flourishing and what we do in academic libraries is very related to the field of human information interaction. So you've probably heard of human computer interaction, HCI, but human information interaction, HII, which is kind of a subset of HCI, but not really. It's kind of its own thing, really looks specifically at the human relationship with information. And I've done quite a bit of research on that just to help inform me on the concept of flourishing and what it means to have a relationship with information. So our relationship with information changes because of who we are and what we do and what our lived experiences are. So going back to that Western wheel where identity is at the center. So no one is going to go into an information world or in the same way. So according to HII theory, this means that when we enter into this relationship, we bring our lived experiences and we bring our whole authentic selves to that relationship. And ultimately that shapes how we interact with information and how we use it. And we know this is very much now going into the field of bias and, oh my gosh, I'm escaping critical information literacy theories, right? Like, so that the bias and what information brings, but also the bias that we bring to that information relationship. So, but I do want to emphasize that our interaction with information, it's reciprocal. It helps us develop our identities. It helps us develop our virtues and values that go with those identities over time. So I find this to be a very, there's a term that I refer to quite often. It's called the infosphere. And this comes from the philosophy of information. And there's a link in the references in the LibGuide. But in the infosphere, it is all players, all agents are equally important in the creation, development, consumption of information. So I find that with information literacy, we tend to hyper focus on the content or the artifact of information, and we tend to lean away from thinking about the student perspective and what that means in that relationship. Though I do think with critical information literacy, that is definitely becoming far stronger in our research. So flourishing with information recognizes that our relationships fulfills our purpose, potential, and lifelong learning. And information also helps us develop identities and the virtues and values that go with those identities. And to flourish with information, we as users of information must develop virtues and values and use information that is civically minded. And I find that as an instruction outreach or as an instruction librarian, one of the things that my colleagues and I would grapple with was, okay, we have our students for 4 years and then we teach them all this stuff, but then they graduate and then what? So I'm hoping that this flourishing aspect kind of bridges a little bit of what we feel like we're losing when they graduate. It's like, okay, what can we focus on and how can we help them succeed and thrive and grow and be sustained and civically minded post-graduation? I'm just gonna So I wanted to share my aha moment, and this is a pandemic-related situation that deals with a student's mental health crisis. I had a student who would come and visit and just do research, and we developed just a relationship with these students, with the student. And then at one point, they were in a mental health crisis to the point where I had to escort them to the ER because they were suicidal, and I had to be their proxy or mentor, there and talking to the parent. And after the crisis had de-escalated, I realized that I had a plan in place for this student and how I could think about what I did in the libraries and create a space of belonging and value for that student so they could come in and just do their homework or study or do their research or whatever. So we set up a standing appointment where she would come and sit in this little vestibule that I had in my office, outside my office, and she would just sit there and study every Monday. No strings attached, no questions, 2 to 4. She just needed a touchstone. And it got me to thinking about what my role is on campus, about the services we provide in general, and think about what it is we teach about information and how we can reach beyond the information literacy scope. And that brings me to this idea of this humanness of learning and the humanness of information and how we engage with information, how we engage with students on campus as librarians, how we develop programming. And so some of the tangential theories that I really got into, which we're looking at a lot of pedagogies, I wanted to think about that identity concept, like how do we reach student identity when we're teaching information literacy or developing programming? And that led me to a lot of research on stereotype threat, college readiness, emerging adulthood, but also from the teacher's perspective, we also have to think about teacher bias. Like, what is it that we bring into that relationship? And what is that library bias? And then tangential to that is, of course, library anxiety. We know it exists, it happens. So how can we de-escalate library anxiety for students? So that was the beginning of my journey into information literacy. I'm just going to do a quick time check. Okay. So to build on my aha moment, after that, I decided I was just going about my business and running my first year experience program. And this is a team-based scavenger hunt activity. And so students come, it's outside of their normal class time, and they come, they sit at a table, there are about 30 students, and then I split up the tables, or each table becomes a team, and the teams go out and do a scavenger hunt. And they go and they explore the libraries, the physical spaces, the virtual spaces, services, everything. And when I ran the assessment that first fall that we were back in person, I was blown away by the results because I was not expecting the student results to be so skewed towards that affective or social emotional side of learning. And here there's some examples where people were 31 group, like working in groups, and that it was fun. It just reiterated to me that, I had kind of not forgotten about that student's mental health crisis, but it made me realize that this is actual evidence that we are really hitting something here that is valuable, that students value. So I wanted to pursue that some more. So this is what really got me going on optimism and flourishing. And it was that connection. So I was looking more closely at some of these words, and I was looking more closely at the tags and how we can measure these connections. So fun, group, people, they're all interconnected. And I do have to say that we have massage chairs in our library. So we're not giving massages. So there's the massage chairs. So I was really excited by this, seeing this interconnection. It's like the students are telling me what they wanted. I was expecting that they were going to be like, yeah, I really liked finding out that we have all these study rooms, or I liked finding out that we had 3D printing or virtual reality. No, those were like way, 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 way down. What was most important was making friends, meeting people, that they were working in groups, working in teams. And, I don't know if this is a COVID specific issue, but this was the first time that we were back in person. And, that student that was in a mental health crisis, one of the issues was everything was virtual. She was in a dorm room doing all of her classes online. So she was by herself, isolated. And I'm realizing that this human connection is what we really need to think about and capture. So it got me very, you can tell I get very excited by all of this. So, and I'm talking about emerging adults here. So emerging adults are students who are between the ages of 18 and 25. And it's this time where they are, spreading their wings, leaving home, trying to figure out, but they're also taking on all these responsibilities, and they need to figure out all these like time management or mental health or physical health. So these emerging adults is really what I'm focusing on. I really think about first year and second year students, and also transfer students as well, because I think they are a unique being on campus, and we really need to think about how we welcome them onto our campuses. So what I decided to develop is what I was really grappling with is like, okay, where do I go? What do I find? What's out there about flourishing with information? And how do we support flourishing in library programming? And by this, I mean, how do we talk to our chairs and deans or supervisors or libraries? Or how do we rate the value of this in our annual reports? How do we use this information, develop programs, see the data, but also like talk to other people on campus? So that is really what I was striving for. So increased sense of belonging and legitimacy, improved confidence in academic abilities, stronger connections to the university community. The problem is there is no standard language that talks about these things as a whole for us as practitioners or professionals or at the organizational level. I did a deep dive into the history of the development of the framework for information literacy. At the very beginning, it was there, but then it kind of edged out a little bit to really focus on information literacy rather than that affective or social emotional need. So this is why I decided to really write language, because it just helped me talk about what I do, because not very many people understand what I do, even in my own library, because it is so removed from information literacy. Like, we've got info lit down. I'm sure all you do. But the framework for flourishing, and here are the three frames that really helped me, like, really just serve as guideposts as I was developing. It's like, okay, what am I doing? How do I want to do it? Why am I doing it? And then it turns into a whole thing. So that's what I'm going to talk about now, this whole thing about the framework for flourishing. So I wanted an assessment tool that looked at college student relationships with information and those relationships leading to flourishing. So I developed the three frames of increased sense of belonging and legitimacy, improved confidence, and connectedness. So here you see the term infosphere. So belonging in the infosphere develops purpose. Confidence in the infosphere develops resilience. Connectedness in the infosphere develops potential. And the term resilience, I really struggled with the term that I wanted there, because I wanted to talk about the long-term growth. And I shied away from grit because I don't like that term. I think it's too harsh, and I think failure is okay. I am a believer in failure. I'm a believer in not everything is perfect, and I feel like grit forces us into that mindset, which is not my philosophical take. It might be yours. I don't know. So I did base these frames on the structure of the ACRL framework. So that means I have threshold concepts, I have knowledge practices, and I have dispositions available. So again, the frames are very similar to information literacy, yet they can stand alone. So now we're just going to go through them individually, and I am just looking at some chats, making sure, did I miss any questions? I see some conversations, but no questions? Okay, just wanted to double check. Okay, just making sure I'm not forgetting anything. So frame 1, belonging in the infosphere develops purpose and potential. So I'll let you read that. And again, these are all on that LibGuide that I shared with you earlier. So if you want to spend more time looking more specifically here and those really dense screen format structure, so you can go there. So belonging is about having the sense that you matter and that your presence, personhood, and agency is legitimized and valid. Belonging for students is the feeling that they matter to others on campus, such as their peers, faculty, staff, and us librarians. And belonging creates communities, but it also helps students forge a sense of place and mattering on college campuses. And it's a grounded sense of belonging means that when a student engages with information, they are doing so with a validated sense of self-agency and are primed to grow in their thinking and knowledge building. So maybe not coming in totally stressed out, or maybe not coming in totally, on the defensive, like there's, stuck in their thinking or mindset. And a sense of belonging is essential to engagement in the infosphere. So that's the definition. I'm going to go through the definitions, then I'll go through the dispositions. And yes, and we want them to own it, right? In our university, the libraries is funded by student tuition dollars. They do own it. We need to let them know that. So confidence is the ability to identify and rely upon self-worth and value the authentic self. So confidence leads to resilience, and that students can rely on in classrooms and in the infosphere. And students' academic performances improve when they can engage fully as their whole selves in the academic environment. So the services, programs, and resources that we provide in academic libraries should be a safe space, and I know they are, but do students know they are? I don't know. So how do we tell them that? In the classroom, confidence is put at risk when bias or prejudicial thinking devalues a student's identity and worth. And this is what I was talking about a little bit. Students come in with a stereotype threat, where they come in assuming that everyone has a predetermined concept of who they are, but also teachers and librarians, we come in with predetermined. Unfortunately, this is the reality. We come in with these predetermined mindsets. So how do we break those barriers down? So how do we help them develop self-confidence, reclaim their authentic self? And confident students can show adaptability and resilience and perseverance while navigating information and the changes in information. We talked about AI and what that means. So that virtue and those virtues and ethics that we're helping them develop. Connectedness. So this differs slightly from belonging in that belonging focuses on individual need for agency, and connectedness is about building networks and systems that provide opportunities and experiences in those communities. So in the context of higher ed, connectedness can be having strong social networks, and it can just basically mean feeling good at school, or even just wanting to go to school, wanting to go to class, wanting to do their homework. That concept is very important for students, and if they have low connectedness, then they're less likely to engage. So, having caring teachers and feeling supported by peers, faculty, staff, and administrators, and librarians. Social connectedness reiterates civic mindedness and public communal good. And in libraries, this social connectedness can invoke the connection students make with information they interact with. And a sense of connectedness is an essential component to a student's experience on campus. So students need to be connected to library resources, library opportunities, build their networks in their libraries, maybe with librarians, maybe with other students in the libraries, whatever it is, academic, social, civic, doesn't matter. And these network opportunities help students develop their sense of purpose in academics with their peers or in their place in the community. So it's really about elevating, lifting up these students. So I just want to double check on time. Oh my God, okay. Maybe we're gonna do this one tomorrow because this will be good. So ignore that one. So I want to show you examples of the dispositions and the knowledge practices. And again, this was just me trying to formalize it. And I'm really open to ideas and conversations because my goal is to formalize this with ACRL. So I am hopefully starting a discussion group through ACRL. So I have a link on the form on the LibGuide if you want to sign up for that. But notice that I have knowledge practices and dispositions that go with the definitions. So what it is that students are learning and the dispositions that how they're actually doing this in practice. So for belonging, for example, acknowledge the individual perspectives at play in the infosphere. So that's, bias and, that is very closely related to information literacy for sure, and value belonging for themselves and others. So everyone has a place in that world. Identify academic libraries as a campus resource. And then looking over the dispositions, recognize that perspectives contribute to purpose and that those may change over time. Or down below, balance their social and emotional well-being with academic success and holistic approach to fulfilling their purpose. And I will show you a few programs that I've done. So again, these are all on the LibGuide. So again, here we have confidence, knowledge practices, and dispositions. Rely on tools and skills learned to adapt and persevere when faced with dissonance created by choice in the infosphere. And disposition being recognize their personal value systems as an asset when engaging in the infosphere. So recognizing their authentic self, for example. And I'll let you read the rest because I don't want to spend too much time going through all of these. And then here, for example, connectedness. Recognize the library as a space where students can connect to spaces, services, peers, faculty, etc., and develop strong connections to the campus communities, and recognize the academic library as a support to grow their potential. So that is an example for connectedness. So I do want to save time for questions. We'll have more time tomorrow for questions. So, and again, these are explained in more detail on the LibGuide. Some of the programs I developed, so based on belonging, confidence, and connectedness. So Anti-Procrastination Cafe is something I found in Japan. And this is where students come and they just sit and I teach them study skills, and they just hang out and they set a goal, and I'm there as a resource resource for research, and then they get a prize when they're done they complete their goal. So that was a lot of fun. Study communities, students came and I connected students. It was like in my mind, I called it academic speed dating, because they came, they asked questions, they found their partners, their study partners, and then they developed a study plan. So that was another one. 3D&D, so 3D printing and Dungeons and Dragons put together, so highlighting library resources, but also pulling in a new demographic that we haven't necessarily pulled in before, being the Dungeons and Dragons. And let me tell you, it was a packed house 3 weeks in a row. It was crazy. De-stress from the tests is a finals week and midterm like stress busters, where we have therapy dogs, art therapy, giving them a sense to like mental, taking care of their mental health during finals week. And then some of the partnerships that I've created because of this, because of all the data that I've created, is student success services. So RSOs being our student or our registered student organizations, counseling services. During the MSU shooting, we had counseling services available in the libraries. I brought them in to have on-demand counseling. The two universities are very closely connected, the two communities are, so we wanted to make sure we had them on hand. Trio programming embedded into their grant. So it's very specific programming for them. Office of Student Transitions, so FYE and transfer students, Native American Affairs Council, therapy dog clinics, the Latinx employee group, and health promotion and education. Again, we could talk more about these tomorrow. And because if I go back to a slide, if you want to do it after today, that would be great. This is, I'll put this in the link. This is, I see some brainstorming happening already. So you can add your ideas here, and we're going to build off of these ideas tomorrow, or we'll do it again first thing. I'm going to stop there. So, and again, talking about artificial intelligence, you know, this is challenging the infosphere, right? It's challenging how we think about information and what our relationship with information is. So how do we address that as well? And I don't want to, you know, go too much into AI, but so the framework for Flourishing, right, it provides shared language for academic librarians and libraries to define and measure flourishing, but it also raises the questions about the challenges that emerge, right, for emerging adults and the tensions that emerge with the infosphere. And the core of our work is human focus, and humanness of our work is to bolster purpose and potential in our students, foster their adaptability and resilience in the face of uncertainty, while also helping them shape their beliefs and value systems. So these programs that I developed can help them balance academic, social, emotional needs, and hopefully we can then graduate them off and they will bring that into their world, wherever that brings them. So I'm going to stop there. I knew it was going to go fast, but man, you guys, that goes fast. So 5 minutes for questions. I'm so sorry. And we'll do more of the interactive stuff in the morning. We're really going to look at brainstorming ideas for programming, brainstorming ideas for assessment, and we're going to look very specifically at assessment tools tomorrow. So don't worry.
This has been so wonderful. Thank you, Kate. I'm gonna stop you so we can get to our next session.
Yeah, for sure.
So everybody save your questions for tomorrow. Hopefully we'll have more time to address those then. Write them down, put them in the notes, in the chat, whatever you think. And then we'll go take 5 minutes and then we'll go to our next presenter.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Kate. This is wonderful.
Julie, I'm going to stop this recording and we'll do each session as its individual recording to make it easier to load to the cloud and distinguish later.
I had that thought, so that's perfect.
Okay, cool. Awesome.